to the Bradshaw Boys, a podcast where three relatively grown men binge the iconic HBO series Sex and the City. So dust off those DVDs and grab yourself a white wine or even a Cosmopolitan and settle in. Take it away, boys.
Welcome to the Bradshaw Boys, a podcast where three guys watch their way through Sex and the City for the first time ever, mostly. I'm Cory Cavin.
I am Jon Sieber.
I'm Kevin James Doyle.
And today we have a very special guest with us. We're very excited. She is the author of the HarperCollins, the Burlesque Handbook, and Fierce, the History of Leopard Print. And she's the headmistress of the New York City School of Burlesque. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Jo Weldon.
Hi.
Hey,
Yes.
Jo.
Thanks for having me.
And
Thank you for being here.
And she did not wear leopard print today.
That is a lie. She is wearing a full leopard print dress.
It's Jaguar.
Oh
my gosh.
Yeah.
John is right. It's not leopard
Yeah.
print.
I told you. I knew it.
Is that your next book, The History of Jaguar Print?
I actually decided that the term leopard print is a colloquialism that covers the majority of big cat prints. So
Oh.
That's great.
And The History of Leopard Print that just came out last month, right?
yeah.
Congratulations.
Ooh.
Thank you.
I feel like your intro was like your two books and what you do with the School of Burlesque. So you're one of our guests that has so much to encompass. And I want to talk about the books, but can you just tell us like a little bit about yourself before we get to Sex and the City stuff? Tell us a little bit about yourself with Burlesque and the City, Burlesque and the City, and
Yeah.
just like give us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I worked in strip joints from 1980 until I moved here in 97, 98.
Okay.
And I worked in them a few more times after that. But I got into it because I had seen all these great pictures of burlesque and had seen Gypsy Rose Lee and all that. And I was a featured dancer, which means you do these long themed acts, like 15, 20 minutes. And they're themed. They kind of look like what you think of when you think of burlesque in New York. And when I moved here, I had quit performing, and then I went to a neo burlesque show, and I went, oh, I do that. This is just the part I like. And yeah, so I sort of fell back into it, and I was writing, and I made a website, and this is before anything. There was I don't think there was even MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like GeoCities or one of those old. You remember the websites at the bottom that had like the number of people that visited?
The counter.
Yeah, they actually had. And
I had a counter.
GeoCities.
Yeah, one of those old school websites.
G-strings forever. And so it was actually about strip joints, but then I started adding the burlesque stuff. And so I listed all these books and I talked about burlesque. So people started to think of me as like a burlesque educator and ask me to teach. So I did.
Oh, wow. So you just got into it because people were like, you know a lot about this and you might as well teach.
Yeah.
And you had performed.
Yeah, well, I'd been doing some version of, like, I'd also been doing performance art and naked poetry readings and punk rock bars and stuff like that. So, there was a mix of everything, and it kind of mixed all my interests. And yeah, I just started performing again after thinking I was done.
Okay.
And loved it. I mean, it was a very small community then. Everybody was super friendly. I mean, they still mostly are. And yeah, and then I started traveling. I would never have thought burlesque would take me around the world traveling. So that's pretty exciting.
That's awesome. Where's the most interesting place that you've gone to do burlesque?
Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many good places. Vienna. I'm going to Prague and Berlin this year.
Whoa.
Man.
Yeah, and I
That's
never
really
thought.
exciting.
Yes, I'm shocked.
That's amazing. I got to start doing burlesque. So
Yeah, join me.
I really
Well,
got
it
to.
took me a while.
Yeah,
to be
I was
fair.
gonna say, I got to
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
so that by like 2030.
Yeah, I've definitely put in those 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're an expert.
Yeah.
I would say you probably are the Malcolm Gladwell expert on burlesque. If you were going to write a chapter on it, it would be you probably.
She
I would be
literally wrote
into
the book
it.
on it.
I wrote the book. Yeah.
Have you ever done a Malcolm Gladwell burlesque? Like with a big wig?
No, but I kind of love
You
that.
have like books and I want to tell you about, I don't know, I can't do a Malcolm Gladwell voice.
No.
There is a Malcolm, like in the book, his book Outliers. There is a thing that he talks about in that's basically the people that get into a lot of things. It's just that collision of like chance and like what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it is interesting that you're like, Yeah, I became the expert on it, not because I was like, I'm going to do it. It was like, you had already done all the work. And
Put
they're
in
like,
the
oh,
footwork and then
we're sending you to Prague now, you know?
Yeah, I was like, oh, here's an opportunity.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. So
Very grateful for it.
we also ask people this, and this is because it's a Sex and the City podcast, and you've been in New York since around the time when they were doing the show. What is your experience with Sex and the City, if any? Maybe not.
So this is kind of random, but I feel like when you move to New York, you become adjacent to everything, you know? And so I've had a lot of Sex and the City adjacent things. Like I worked at the cutting room, which was partly owned by Chris Noth, so he would be around a lot. And
Did you see how all of our faces just
We
lit
all
up when
perked
we
up.
all were like,
Yeah.
what? Because we're big.
We're big guys.
fans.
But
Oh, yeah, he's
the
great.
cutting room is where we
Oh my
went
gosh,
to,
that's right. We
to
went to-
Cynthia Nixon's birthday party.
Oh,
It was at the
yeah,
cutting
yeah,
room,
that was at the
probably
cutting
because
room.
of Chris Noth.
It was when she, announced her candidacy.
I didn't even
Forgot-
know
and it was at the
that.
cutting room.
Because I haven't been bartending for a while. So I was bartending there, and I was also doing burlesque there. And
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So there's a Noth connection there.
yeah, and he was, very easy to work with or
Yeah.
work around. He wasn't my boss.
Yeah.
He would just show up.
Wait, so he owns it, or he?
I have no idea what his connection is now. He was a part owner or investor. Then, I never really
Yeah.
got into that.
Mhm.
But he was
place-
invested, and he was a good tipper. So a lot of times owners don't tip. So I was impressed.
That's cool.
All right. So you were at the cutting room next to Noth.
Mhm.
I interrupted your connections to the show. So
Yeah, and I lived in the West Village, and I used to run into, oddly, not Sarah Jessica Parker, but Matthew Broderick on the street all the time.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Yes, and then my roommate, this was not that long ago, my roommate Julie Atlas Muse coached Kim Cattrall in a movie called Meet Monica Velour about strippers.
No way.
And then Julie couldn't make it to the premiere, so she asked if I could go in her place. So I did, and I ended up sitting with Kim Cattrall and Liza Minnelli.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's so random and awesome. And then there's something else. Oh, Patricia Field. A lot of my friends worked for Patricia Field, where I'd been shopping for decades. So I got
Yeah.
a lot of leopard print there. Like literally, it was just this landmark for me. Like I would come to New York before I lived here, and I had to go to Patricia Field.
Yeah.
And so it's just this kind of like I say, adjacent
Mhm.
thing.
Would you consider yourself a Sex and the City fan? Have you seen
I've
the show?
enjoyed
Are
it
you
when I
familiar with the
watched
show?
it.
Okay.
But I never really followed it because we didn't have a TV, and then I would go over to my girlfriend's house, and she loved it, and so I'd watch it with her. And
Oh,
this
cool.
is still in the 90s. So.
Yeah.
So like when it was on.
Mhm.
Did you notice New York change? I'm assuming you were here before Sex and the City, and now you're here after the Sex and the City. Have you noticed in your specific field things that have changed about New York because of the show?
You mean in burlesque or?
Yeah, sure.
Or
I-
even in just, you said like you lived in the West Village, even there, because like that's a set of the show pretty much. Like people go to Magnolia and stuff like that.
Oh, Magnolia. I mean, yeah. So I moved here because I was interested in like CBGBs, and then I ended up hanging out at Don Hill's and everything. And there's like this overlap.
Mhm.
Again, that adjacent thing of rock and roll and everything else. And I think for me, I made a lot of Cosmos. I made a lot.
Do you like Cosmos?
I don't drink, but they
Okay.
they look delicious. Yeah, I love cranberry juice. So, and it just for me, I had only visited here before,
Mhm.
so I actually moved here after the phenomenon.
Mhm.
Okay.
So what's changed for me the most is like having lived on the West Side and worked in a lot of the clubs there, like Mother and all that, is that there used to be, Wigstock, and there was
Mhm.
a big drag community over there. Just like you would just see drag queens just walking around on the street, or just
Mhm.
people in drag, or just genderqueer people. And I don't think it's gone, but I definitely don't see it as much. And
Interesting.
there's that Highline neighborhood, which looks
Yeah.
like it's CGI'd in parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially at the end of the High Line. So it's, and that shopping area there in Chelsea is totally different than
Right.
the meatpacking district where we used to I worked in this, I must have been an illegal strip club over there. And there were, there would be drag queens, and then there would be, women working on the street, and everybody kind of knew each other. And I don't see that
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. The is there like, does it feel like, oh, that was like things change, or is there do you feel like there's like a sadness to like, because New York clearly has changed a lot, in place, there's the High Line now, and then, what was that one bar, that was there, the Hogs and Heifers, that closed, and now there's, an Apple store. Is that like, that's the way it is, or is it like a sadness to it?
I actually was talking about this with a friend of mine who's another writer named Ada Calhoun, who wrote a book called St. Mark's is Dead.
Yeah.
And she grew up on St. Mark's. And she says that she would hear one person after another say, this was the golden age of St. Mark's. And it was always a different age of St. Mark's, a different era. And that it would always be like when they were 19.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I moved to New York looking for different things, and I see different golden eras, but I think it's hard to say. Like one day somebody will accidentally be right and culture will be dead in New York, but I've never, I moved here wanting to go to libraries and readings and plays and, and they're there. Like they're there.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's easy to like, just the positive spin that I feel like you have. Like I used to be a tour guide, so I knew I feel like I've thought about and studied a lot of the eras of New York. And there are quotes that you hear from 1910 that are like, it's all over. And it's like, things change a lot. And also there's plenty of areas spread out in Queens and up in the Bronx and out in Brooklyn that are not didn't have stuff going on then. So I guess it's just changed the neighborhoods of where that stuff is going down.
Yeah, and I've been priced out of several neighborhoods, but I feel like even in burlesque, like in the 1930s, they published a whole book about the golden age of burlesque and how burlesque was dead now. And this was like 1930s, and here we are in yet another golden age of burlesque. So,
well, I think we're gonna watch the episode, and today we're watching. It's season 2, episode 9, Old Dogs, New Dicks, and I think it has something to do with. There is a drag queen element.
There's a drag queen element. I don't know if there's any burlesque element, but I'm pretty sure there's a drag queen element in it.
But we're going to watch it and find out and come back and chat about it.
Yeah. And the burlesque scene was teeny during
back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
we'll be back.
All right.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Episode 21, Old Dogs, New Dicks. Carrie tries to get Big to stop checking out other women when they're together. Miranda and Steve's opposite schedules become a problem, and Samantha runs into an old hockey player boyfriend who is now a blonde drag queen named Samantha. Charlotte is turned off when she dates a man who has not been circumcised, while Samantha claims to prefer it. And now, back to the boys.
Welcome back, everybody.
Woo.
Wow.
Can't teach an old dog new dicks.
Old dogs, new dicks. That was quite an episode. I'm excited to talk about that.
That was a real good ep. That was a very good ep.
It's real good to see Steve again, but I will say I'm missing Skipper a little bit. It made me miss Skipper.
I will say, Joe, do you know who Skipper is?
No.
He's a season 1 guy who
played by an actor that we talked to every once in a while, Ben Weber.
We've talked to Ben Weber.
Ben, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show.
We'd love to have you on the show, Ben, and we love you in general. He's a character from the first season that we don't think comes back, and he dated Miranda, and he's a super nerd, and we kind of miss him.
He was Miranda's only other recurring boyfriend, I believe. So far, yeah. So it's good to see Steve. I'm really excited to kind of get to know him a little bit, loosen him up like an old baseball mitt. But right now, oil him up. I miss Skip.
That's understandable. I will say though, people have said this. Like we met Steve last episode, and people have said during the whole time they're like, "You're gonna love Steve." Like we've had guests on this show say that, and the more we get to know him, the more I like him. And also I got to say this. I noticed this episode. He's in good shape.
Yeah, Steve works out.
John, why don't you give a rundown of what happened in the episode so we can get to talking about all the wonderful things that happened?
The theme of this episode obviously was change, and I think all 4 of the ladies were experiencing change in some way with their relationships. Charlotte's change was, I think one we'll spend a lot of time talking about. She was dating a gentleman named Mike. He was a food critic, the 5-whisk scale, of course, who was uncircumcised.
Yeah, which is funny. His name was Mike Flapper.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding.
And he gets circumcised, what we think is for Charlotte, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
There's a twist.
Yeah. Steve and Miranda, we find out they have very different schedules. Miranda is an early bird. She's got to get to spin, which, by the way,
Still going strong.
spin is bigger now than ever before.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was a thing back then.
I didn't either.
They have different schedules because Steve is, of course, bartending at his bar and getting home really late. So there's some change going on there. It's actually Miranda who ends up changed. Great last scene of the show, by the way, I thought.
Such a good last scene.
Carrie and Big are going through. She's trying to change him. At first it's about checking out other women or smoking cigars, but I think it was really a communication issue, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And then lastly, which I thought was a great scene, we meet Samantha, the drag queen, who was an ex-hockey player that Samantha met, who is now a drag queen that goes by the name Samantha, which
And looks
really,
just
really
like
fun.
her.
Looks just like Samantha.
Yeah, I would say, to jump right in and say, one of the things that maybe I liked about the episode was having Samantha a little more. Samantha? Kim Cattrall, right?
Kim Cattrall, Samantha.
Yeah. I forgot. Samantha more in a
blacked out.
Yeah. More in a box and not like, I feel like sometimes when they let her storylines run free, it can turn into like the Marx Brothers. And it's just like, bah, 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 bah. And so when you were describing the whole plot, I was like, there was some weight to this episode and I liked it a lot. And it was kind of nice not having her in every scene.
Which is interesting because the episode description is like Samantha visits a drag queen that she used to, and I was like, oh, that's for sure going to be the central plot, but it was not a big story. It was a 2-minute thing.
And it was kind of like a gag, but it was like in and out without her every scene, just being like, can you believe it?
Yeah.
What did I do? Like,
There's a weird thing too with her where she gets like the episode, I forget what it was, but it was it was written by the same person that wrote The Greatest Showman. It was the Freaks episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Samantha, there's the plastic surgery thing. And I feel like anytime that she gets kind of shut down a little bit, and like in this one, when she's talking to the drag queen, she kind of gets shut down a little bit. There's something, she's not, like you said, like usually they just let her run free and then she just kind of like takes over things. And when she gets shut down, her presence is like very removed from the episode. Like you notice something missing.
Yeah.
She's like a heavy spice. You take it out of the recipe. This usually has a little more Samantha in it.
So, Joe, I
Don't
have to
taste
know.
that right now. No more cumin. She's cumin. Where is it? No more Samantha.
Have you been to a drag queen bingo before?
Oh yeah, I've worked at them.
Really?
Like as a ball puller.
Really?
Yeah.
As a ball pull.
I did not know that was even a thing.
It isn't
right now.
usually they do all the stuff. But
Would you say that I've noticed, at least in the last maybe since RuPaul's Drag Race has been around, that drag has exploded in popularity.
it definitely has. And I've always been amazed because there's my early impressions of drag queens, in nightlife, was that a lot of the people that I worked with would be very invested in their wardrobes and costumes and everything, and not that invested in the rest of their lifestyle.
Sure.
And now I feel like it's more integrated because it's more understood. I don't know. You'd have to ask a drag queen.
Right.
But yeah, it's amazing to see drag queens be appreciated.
Yeah.
And to see the artistry appreciated. And I think it's not really a new thing at all. So it's interesting to see it treated almost as a new thing.
Yeah. I just know I went to my very first drag show for my friend Andre's birthday. And it was like in town hall or city hall, like a huge auditorium. It was packed and there were people of all different ages. And,
Town Hall, the big venue like near Times Square.
Yeah.
It's like a giant theater.
Huge. And it was and I had never seen RuPaul's Drag Race, but it was all the stars from that show. And there's a lot of jokes that went over my head, but It was super fun. It was amazing.
After this wedding in Chattanooga, Tennessee that I went to late last year, it was like 11 p.m. and like the wedding had died down and we're like, where do we go? And some people were going to the hotel bar, but we heard about this gay bar in Chattanooga that had like apparently an amazing drag night. And we went and it was, because there was like drag is not big in Chattanooga, I don't think, except for this one place.
I believe that it is referred to as Draganooga. It's huge there, Kevin. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
But it was like, it was cool being in New York. It would have been the coolest bar and coolest show I've ever. It was just like packed. It reminded me of like when you go into like a set from a movie. It almost looked like The Matrix or something like that. And there was just tons of people there. And it was the only drag show I'd been to, but it was absolutely amazing.
Super fun.
So in Atlanta, there was because I moved to New York from Atlanta, where I was from when I was 11 to when I was 35, and there was a club called Club Rio in the 80s where I saw RuPaul.
Oh wow!
And,
Wow.
Jane County. So Wayne County became Jane County, and John Sex and Phoebe Legere. So it was really interesting to have not been, I wasn't close to any of these people, but I saw them there, and then to see them become big stars. And it's amazing to see RuPaul really doing her thing.
Yeah.
Kind of
it's
amazing.
Awesome.
That's
It's
pretty-
really
is-
great.
That also I don't want to spend like too much time on this, but it makes me think of, do you know the movie Paris is Burning?
Mhm.
That's about the drag scene in New York.
Yeah.
And that kind of where it was, like you're saying RuPaul was in Atlanta. Is there a huge birth out of like the 1970s drag scene in New York with Paris is Burning? And
I'm not an expert on that. I mean, I know a lot of those people, but I'm so far from an expert on drag history. I've just always been around it because drag life and gender bending have always intersected with the things that I'm interested in, like, sex work, or not because they're doing sex work, but because you live in the nightlife.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been part of nightlife. I've worked in bars. I've been a bartender. I've been a stripper. And there's just always an overlap in nightlife. And I just feel like without it, there's just not much flavor to nightlife without drag, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, based on my Chattanooga experience, I completely agree. That was the coolest place to hang in Tennessee.
Yeah.
When we were watching the show, you mentioned in one of the scenes, you're like, "Oh my goodness, I used to live there." Do you remember? I think it was in the beginning when like
It was right where Village Cigars.
Right. I
the
used
West
to live on
Village.
Christopher Street,
awesome.
between 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue.
Were there was there a problem of construction workers constantly checking out women in that corner like there was in the show?
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I mean, then it's just that nonstop street harassment thing,
Yeah.
and they're not really looking at it that way. They're looking at it kind of lighthearted way.
Right.
And it's interesting because they didn't really wrap up that through line
Yeah.
about men checking out women. They didn't really reach a
Right.
conclusion on that. Just the looking is one thing. Like they didn't really show the
Yeah.
I think they
hey
shifted all,
baby.
yeah, I feel like they shifted all that behavior just to what Big was doing to Carrie all the time, where he just ended up like checking out other women all the time.
It is a big switch in New York, I guess anywhere, but where it's a primarily walking city, when like everyone has on Canada Goose jackets or big parkas, and then all of a sudden when it's like warm out, it's just like, man, no one has clothes on.
Speaking of short shorts, your shorts
pretty
are
exciting.
I'm rocking some.
They're riding up there.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I'm wearing some.
But you got some very short shorts on.
I had to wear like long sleeves and pants and boots today. So
You're going
and
full
it's-
Tommy Bahama.
Oh
today.
yeah, I'm definitely in my beach zone right now. And as I was walking over, I could see there was like 4 or
Did
5
you get
girls.
catcalled by a lot
Oh
of
yeah,
people?
they're whistling.
Like, hey baby.
Yeah,
But they were all female construction workers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that to speak to the through line, I think that what my takeaway from it was that there was just a communication issue between the two of them.
Mhm.
That she obviously
they
had a
seem-
problem with the checking out other women and the cigars, and he had the problem with the oranges. And I mean,
And they were acting out because they weren't talking, and
Exactly.
it was a episode about communication.
Right, yeah.
Like, go ahead and talk about it. Don't hold it in.
Which is good. It's good to see them actually make a relational breakthrough. Like it sucks that they had to be as a result of physical violence for him, like pushing her out of bed and then her hitting him. But I was actually like, I'm proud of you guys. Like,
It was their first
Big
time.
shows up with the turtleneck and they actually talk through some issues. It was like, all right.
I
this
thought
is
for
like-
sure he was going to break up with her. That's
yeah,
what I
yeah.
thought. I
Yeah.
thought it was like, yo, it's over.
Yeah, when he
And I-
started into that monologue, that was that like little like 5-line monologue that
Yeah.
he did about that whole thing. I also wonder if that was his audition monologue for the show.
I think his audition monologue was, I'm being executed tomorrow, so you ladies don't mind if I smoke a cigar with my parole officer, do you?
It's so
by
funny
the way-
seeing the girls' faces too. They're like,
I know.
this man is such a handsome little devil. Like they were so into that.
Yeah.
He was pretty arrogant and kind of a douche then, which I guess we ended up supposed to think that, but I was just like, also I hate cigarettes inside, obviously bad, but cigars inside,
Oh, it's the
cigars
worst.
Yeah,
outside
that's-
is the worst. That's an insane level of
Cigars
smoke.
inside is like cigarettes inside is like I'm a jerk. I'm smoking
Mhm.
inside and making everything smell. A cigar inside is like I'm the worst.
That's
Yeah.
just
I'm
the-
just
it's
gonna ruin everything around me.
It's like
with
an
this
air
awful-
horn.
Well, it was
Yeah.
interesting because he said it's, he made that sort of Freudian joke, it's never just about the cigar.
Right,
Uh-huh.
right.
When he and Carrie were talking about what was really bothering her.
Yeah.
So I love that little, Easter egg, little Freudian Easter egg.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I felt like, when Steve called her to look at the moon, it
Mhm.
reminded me of the movie Moonlighting.
Mm.
Did that?
I'm not familiar with that movie.
I know the TV show Moonlighting.
No, it's different.
Different than that. I
Yeah,
don't know the
it's
movie.
Cher and Nicolas Cage. Oh my God, you have to watch
Moonstruck.
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 Yes.
Yeah.
That scene where they talk about the moon and then he wakes his wife up to look at the moon and it's this really big thing. I don't know. It just reminded me of that.
And we're recording this on today is the biggest lunar eclipse of the century. The night that we're recording. So after this, we have to go look at the moon.
Wow, a lot of moon
Ooh.
stuff.
After this, we should all call each other from a payphone like Steve did to Miranda.
Yeah.
And say, hey, go look at the moon.
It's funny how we all thought that scene was going to be something other than it was. Because
Yeah.
Of that one of the movie. What movie is it? Love Actually.
Love
Where,
Actually, yeah.
you know,
Well, not
go
just-
to the
and
window.
also-
No, that's
Love Actually.
Say
man,
Anything.
Say anything. Where he's holding up the boombox.
Oh,
You
yeah.
think he's going to be out there at the boombox and he's just calling her from a payphone to look
Right.
at the moon.
We
Yeah.
all totally got misled because of that movie, which probably came out after that was filmed.
No. It came out. Say Anything
Say
is from the
Anything's
80s. 80s.
Oh, I'm
yeah.
thinking of a. What am I
You're thinking of
of?
Love Actually when he holds up the sign when she walks out of the.
Oh, but that's in the front
airplane
door.
thing. That's the
yeah.
front door. That's the front door.
And if we can have a discussion on that scene from Love Actually later, which I find very offensive. I hate that scene.
Okay.
I have never seen Love Actually.
Let's talk about like one. Let me make sure I actually feel this way rather than just saying it. One of the most ridiculous plot lines in the show was having Charlotte's boyfriend get circumcised for
That
her.
was so insane to think. I
What?
don't know. Would a doctor do that? That it's almost.
Yeah, they do. They will.
They will
I mean, you can
circumcise
get
a man.
think about all the surgery
you
that
have
you
their
can
number?
get by request.
Yeah.
And
Is there? Do you know a guy that does that well? Because I'm looking to.
I don't. But
to
if
trim
you
mine
can
up.
get butt implants, you can get circumcised
That's
after
true.
childhood.
Yeah.
I do think there is maybe this is a few episodes when we talked about the diaphragm and how it was like people don't talk about that on TV as much anymore. I don't know about diaphragms, but also just like I feel like circumcision, like how ugly are penises with foreskins? I don't feel like that would make it onto TV
that
now.
definitely would not play on
Because-
Oh
TV.
no, it'd be
There'd definitely be tons of articles about being like, we shouldn't shame men with their foreskins.
exactly.
And just the way Charlotte reacted, like
Yeah.
when she first saw it, she was like, it literally was like someone stole her lunch money. She was like devastated.
Did
Yeah.
not want. Did
No.
not want. But I think. But that's the thing, they have the four women talking about circumcision, how they feel about uncircumcised
Right.
penises. And I think women do have those conversations.
Of course.
And I thought it was interesting because they all kind of knew what they thought. Like they
Yeah.
had never thought about, as if they had never thought about it before.
And
Yeah, has she-
5 out of the infinity men that Samantha has slept with were uncircumcised.
She was counting them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily buy that Charlotte. I don't know. It's like most Europeans aren't circumcised, right?
I have been in a hostel in Prague and I saw A lot of anteaters.
I mean, when I go to
a lot of anteaters.
I saw a lot of
when
flesh
I go to
turtlenecks.
Europe, I just
Oh.
line up with other guys and we pull down our pants and compare. So.
In general,
Show me. Are
No,
you
I-
circumcised? Hey,
No.
how you doing?
No, but you're right. I think I think in America it's more of a like cross the board thing. Usually, it's more in Europe. There's less circumcision.
I have no idea, but you know.
I know that. I mean, I literally
know that's
do
true.
that because I like remember traveling like backpacking across.
when you're
Europe
over in
after
Prague
college.
soon,
Yes,
when you
I
go
will
there,
be in Prague.
keep an eye out.
I will ask people about, yes, are you circumcised? Why do you want to know? Well, we watched this episode of Sex and the City and it came up.
There is like, yeah, I had I am circumcised. This is Kevin speaking, if anyone was wondering. But I remember the first time I ever even thought about it, I was in health class with Mr. Clegg, shout out.
What's up,
He's
Mr. Clegg?
Not with us
What's up, Mr.
anymore.
Clegg?
He passed away. But we were just teaching normal health class, and I never even thought about, I don't know, I guess like you never even think about it if you've never had one. And he was just like, they do this thing, and this may have happened to many of you, but when you're born, they cut off part of your penis, and that is abuse, and that shouldn't happen because that's where most of the most cells and the most like tender
Nerves.
part of nerves of your body. So you would enjoy sex more when you're sexually active if you had a foreskin and this was stolen from you. And I remember being like, what? It was just a lot of information to go
Yeah,
through in high school, and then and I don't
When
know.
you hadn't had sex to compare it to? Or?
No, I hadn't, and I still haven't had sex with a foreskin.
Yeah, so you don't have that comparison. I mean, I don't think I knew about circumcision at all when I was a teenager. I don't think I knew it was a thing.
We had one friend of ours that had a foreskin, and we all in high school just called him Smegma Boy.
Oh my God.
So there is. I mean, we did the same thing that Charlotte did. Picked on the poor guy.
Do you think he's getting an adult circumcision right now? Just, man, Kevin used to call me Smegma Boy.
I didn't
it
even
off.
know what that meant at the time. Everyone called him that, and I was like, what is that? If you don't know what smegma is, please don't Google it.
Yeah,
but,
no.
but also, if you do have a foreskin, you got to make sure you clean that.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you clean it anyway.
Yeah, if you don't.
Yeah, you didn't. Not just if you have
Listen,
a foreskin.
If you don't have a foreskin, go home,
No,
dip your dick in the dirt, and
you
never
do
wash it
have to
again.
clean it, but there are specific things you have to do if you have a foreskin to make sure that it stays clean.
What are the? I'm
You have
not,
to pull the foreskin back. You have to clean under, and if you don't, then you get all this. You get smegma.
Really?
Sounds
Yes.
like you do have a foreskin.
I know about it.
You
because-
know way more about this than I do.
Well, I've learned a lot about it because Mr. Clegg made me
That's funny.
wonder what I was missing
Shout
out
out
on.
to Mr. Clegg.
Shout out, Mr. Clark.
I wanted to steer the conversation back to Sex and the City here real quick and bring up a scene that I thought was very New York, but also very un-New York. And that was when it was the first scene with Carrie and Samantha walking through the park, which is a very New York thing to do. A lot of people will walk with their friends through Central Park, dish about the week's news. But both of them were eating
Pretzels.
the pretzels.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, I love this conversation already.
I don't spend a ton of time in Central Park. I used to spend a lot more, but I rarely saw people like Samantha and Carrie walking around casually jamming a pretzel.
I think when I moved here, there's like a few things when I moved here that I was like, oh, I can't wait to like go do that thing. And one of them, weirdly enough, was like, I saw these street carts and was like, I want to get one of those big ass New York
Yeah.
pretzels. And they are the most disappointing
Yeah,
thing.
you
Oh
do-
my God, I love them.
Oh,
To me-
really? This
No,
is a good
to me
conversation.
they're so like they put them on, they get the tongs, put them on the coals. They're cold in the middle. There's too much bread. I never get it, but I didn't know this till a couple months ago. Philadelphia is known for their soft pretzels, and that's like a big thing. Is a Philly soft pretzel, and I had one in Philadelphia, and it was better. But I don't like the New York ones, and I also hate the chestnuts that they sell. Those things taste gross.
Now you're
I've
just
had
being a
some.
jerk.
Yeah,
No,
I've
just
had
being a
some
jerk.
really beautiful pretzels. I don't know.
Oh,
Like,
so for you that was an accurate. So have you walked through the park with your girlfriend
absolutely,
eating
yeah,
pretzels?
totally,
There's also
definitely, and eating a popsicle and whatever's on the cart. You
Yeah.
know,
I
eating hot dogs or whatever.
I'm down with dirty water hot dogs. I
Because
love
people,
those.
yeah, people in New York walk around eating more than people in other cities.
Oh yeah, it's a very big walk and eat city.
There has been a war on carbs since that episode. There has with
true.
the South Beach diet and with the Atkins diet.
Yeah.
That's when people started being like, "What?
Yeah,
I
you're
thought
not going
bread
to be
was
going to
healthy."
spinning class and eating pretzels in the same week.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the fun of watching it is like they're indulging in
Yeah.
junk food. It's junk food.
I do think that's one thing that we see through this show, that it seems like they try to like show that the women like get together and like eat bad Chinese food together, they try to be like, this is what people do, men or women. They eat junk food. They talk, like they indulge.
I think what would we say is our favorite street food in New York? If you have one, what you can go around.
Mine has got to be halal cart food. Love
Absolutely.
it. And actually, I started my own war on carbs a couple of years ago, and I will bomb the carbs. No, but I don't. But I'll go
Just get
like
it no rice. Get it
always.
halal
Just
over salad.
I get combo with salad, and it's
Every time.
That's
so
chicken
good.
combo.
lamb
That's
mix.
chicken and lamb. Yeah.
chicken and
So
lamb mixed
good.
with salad, white sauce, and a little hot sauce because the hot sauce is so hot.
Are we
Yeah.
talking Rafiki's?
I'm not a big Rafiki's halal cart guy. Is Rafiki's the halal guys?
No.
No.
Rafiki's
no.
is
Oh,
different.
Rafiki's is different. No, I do like Rafiki's.
Rafiki's red sign with yellow letters.
Yes, but halal guys are also red and yellow colors.
I've heard
They're yellow sign with red letters.
Is this true?
Yes, it is true.
Halal guys to me they cost more
And
they're not
Too
as
long
good.
of a line.
Too long of a line, not as good.
Better
Rafiki's
lamb,
is
though.
good. I like that, or I just like straight up like normal cart
Yeah.
dude. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's got to be popsicles for me.
Ooh.
I don't know if that's what you like food.
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I mean,
That's a great answer.
I love being able to just go walk through Central Park and get a rainbow pop
yeah.
and go to the museum, and I actually do that
What
That's
museum?
all.
The Met?
still. Yeah, I'll just go to the Met with my
Nice.
rainbow pop
That's amazing. Kevin?
Is
and try to eat it before I go in, because they're not gonna let me take in my pop.
is the Met free by donation only?
It's they now have a minimum or
if
some
you're a
set
resident,
charge.
it's still free.
If it's a resident, still pay what you will.
Okay.
And I think there's a set price for visitors
Okay.
from
Okay.
out of town.
Makes sense.
Wait, what are you guys' foods? Cart foods?
Probably
Mine would 100% be lamb halal.
halal. I love a Mr. Softy. I love a Mr. Softy with
Oh, I
rainbow
love Mr.
sprinkles
Softy.
all day.
I don't.
It's not good, but it's comforting.
I think Mr. Softy, you can like have an entire ice cream cone and it's like warm ice cream that
Yeah.
just sticks together.
yeah.
I don't like
It's
Mr.
not
Softy.
good, but it's good.
It's like fake food. I don't know. It's enjoyable though.
I used
Yeah.
to be a big Dippin' Dots guy, and now
I love
that's kind of
Dippin' Dots.
disappeared off the radar of everywhere.
Ice
It's at
cream of the
amusement
future.
park still.
It's because it's in the
That's
past
true.
now.
We're in the future.
Yeah.
That was the ice cream of the future, and now we're here.
It's savory. For me, it would be a hot dog.
Savory.
Yeah.
Joe, you mentioned that you noticed big cat print in the episode.
Yeah, lots of
And that-
lots of animal print.
I'm
which
glad
made
you're
me
here
super
because
happy.
I didn't notice a single animal print that entire episode.
I noticed at least 3.
Well-
And actually, I have a picture of Samantha in a leopard corset in my book,
Awesome.
like when she's flashing back to the 80s. But there's a lot of leopard print in the 90s. And Samantha was wearing a leopard print top. And then Samantha, the drag queen, was wearing a zebra print jacket.
Oh,
and then
okay.
Wow.
Carrie was wearing a tiger print coat. So I got my dose. I was happy.
That's amazing.
awesome.
Perfect episode for that.
Yeah. Every episode, I think. I think there's, it's a good time for animal print, and with Patricia Field involved, that's definitely an element of her style.
Yeah.
When was we don't have to spend a ton of time talking about leopard print in particular, but when was the first usage of leopard print in the world?
Well, it's kind of hard to say, but the earliest stuff that I looked at was Egyptian.
Okay, so they were.
It's hard
rocking
to
leopard.
say though. Yeah.
I mean, the Egyptians were really. That was a long time ago. They were probably the first.
They were doing a
Yeah.
lot of stuff.
I'll go ahead and authorize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were the first.
Yeah. It's just it's different when you get in the 20th century, because once you have artificial fibers, stuff
Yeah.
becomes affordable. And
Mhm. And then when
Yeah.
did it become? Was it always related to fashion, or was it necessity first, fashion second?
well, the
and
history
now
of
fashion first, necessity second.
Well, the history of wearing furs is a little different, So leopard fur a lot of times was reserved for royalty or nobility.
Mhm.
And there were sumptuary laws, like, commoners weren't allowed to wear it, depending on where you were. And then there was a huge wave of animal print at both the beginning and the end of the 18th century. So
Do you guys own anything animal print?
I own a Canada Goose jacket that is not animal print, but it has coyote fur on it.
Oh, okay.
that's not no.
That's
No.
That's a no.
It's gonna shut down.
No.
No, that's it. That's all I own.
I have a Fred Flintstone costume from. No, I'm kidding. I don't. I
No.
don't.
You gotta have a little leopard print just for fun.
I know.
It's just fun.
Could you recommend if we wanted one accessory that would be
Yeah.
like what one male accessory should we get for leopard print?
Besides the leopard thong.
I'll get a leopard thong
I
right now.
would say
I'll go on
everybody should
Amazon
have a
right now.
leopard thong or a leopard bathing, leopard speedo.
Do you guys want to order Amazon leopard thongs and wear them?
Is there a
Or,
fan?
Or
is there a
you
fan
can go
that
to
is
the West Village and get them.
Yeah, at
Crazy Fantasy?
Where would you say? Crazy. Yeah.
There are so many sex stores around there, and there are even less than there used to be. But there's like the Pink Pussycat, and I can't remember the name of the place, but it's Fantasy. It's on 6th Avenue, and I think
yeah.
That's near West 4th stop, right?
West 4th, magical West 4th.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
one's called Crazy Fantasy because we
Crazy
had
Fantasy.
to have a friend. I used to work at this TV show, and they sent one of the PAs to buy a magazine there for a joke, and the magazine was called Black Inches,
Oh,
and you can
my
only
gosh.
imagine what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a guy holding his black inches, and
It was
they
a
were
ruler
like-
enthusiast magazine.
it was
right?
it was all black rulers,
measuring and rulers. Yeah.
Yep, it was a rule. Yeah.
those
So
stores are fun though. The salespeople are super fun.
Oh, I feel like they were so happy to talk to this scared PA about buying this magazine.
Yeah, they love that stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't bring up the basic theme, which is can men change?
Yeah.
Mm.
And
women sometimes change once a blue moon.
Well, yeah, that was what we ended up with.
Yeah.
But the Carrie's thesis that she typed out was, "Can you change a man?"
yeah, and that is that still is a thing that pervades our, I don't know, relationship discussions and I feel like is still on TV. Of even a lot of any relationship thing, it's always the guy being like, oh, I don't want to change, and I don't know. I've
Yeah.
just heard that a lot, so I was wanted to maybe hear thoughts and discuss that in regards to, I don't know, what they were bringing up and why.
Well, first of all, I always think it's interesting that Samantha, because she's slept with so many guys, is giving the advice, which isn't the same as having relationship insight.
Mm.
Yeah.
But anybody can change. People do all the time. So, the thing is, can you force somebody to change when they don't want to, which is a totally different question, which I would say no.
Hmm.
And I think it's unless it's something that needs to change, like societal as a whole thinks it should change. If you're dating someone and you see a need for them to change in order for your relationship to work, that right there is probably a red flag that there's a problem with how you and the person work together.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You know,
I always say whatever problem you have at the beginning will be the problem you have at the end.
Yeah, because
Huh.
you should want to
But-
grow together in a relationship, but you should never be with someone and be like, this has to change about them or else it won't work. Because that's just, that's, I think, ridiculous.
Mhm.
Yeah, but schedules can change. They were talking about
Sure, sure.
schedules, unless he just wants to be a bartender, which a lot of people love it. I loved it.
Yeah.
But I think it's more about they all did change. They changed from not communicating to communicating.
Yeah.
So I feel like they
Yeah.
did
Yeah,
evolve.
right. Which is what she kind of discovered is what the change that needed to happen for both of them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really sweet.
That was really
I
sweet.
thought it
Yeah.
was really sweet.
I've thought the song at the end was so tasteful and good. It even holds up. So much of the music is either just the worst jazz music of all time, like smooth elevator music,
Oh.
and no, not in this episode. Not in this episode. A lot of the episodes have some pretty cheesy music, but I thought this one
I thought this
was
yeah,
a pretty tasteful soundtrack. It was really
great.
good.
I did think some of the circumcision guy's music was a little
I don't
his,
remember.
or no, his actually had a
Well,
weird.
what soundtrack would you play for discussing adult circumcision?
The Scissor Sisters.
Yeah, this
There
is,
you go. Nailed it.
there you go.
I actually think though they're the cheesy music you're talking about is actually really popular in burlesque. And
Oh,
it's a lot of,
really?
jazz classics. And so I know that they used the Capitol Ultra Lounge series a lot in Sex and the City. And when people started doing neo burlesque, they used it as a background a lot in like comedic numbers because it's so cheesy. But then people started doing like really sexy versions of this music, or they found old sexy versions of this jazz, and it became really popular for the more like slinky, glamorous burlesque numbers.
What's the soundtrack again? You said the name.
Capitol Ultra Lounge series. You can look it
Capitol
up.
Ultra Lounge series.
Have you,
I'll write that down and we'll.
It's the most fun. It's so fun.
Have you seen much Sex and the City related burlesque?
Yeah, I was interested in that too.
I don't know if I have. I wouldn't be surprised, but I've seen so much burlesque, I don't remember. I think it would be great.
Someone needs to start out as Mr. Big and end as Carrie Bradshaw.
I love that idea.
It'd be
is
so
great.
fun.
And what if, as they did that, they were every woman and they ended up as Carrie?
Whoa.
That'd be great.
Ooh,
So they
Whoa.
start as
I
Big,
love it.
They work their way through, then they end up as Carrie,
Oh
and
my
then they
goodness.
end up sitting in a giant martini glass at the end.
Oh, hey, burlesque or Cosmo.
Yeah,
They end
or
up taking a
Cosmo.
bath in a Cosmo.
Yeah.
Are you listening out there, burlesquers?
Great.
I did see something on your Instagram like a week ago. I think it was a show that you had, maybe a class show, and there was someone that was like a giant green fish person. Was it The
That
Shape
was
of Water?
Tallulah Talon's. No, she was just doing a sea monster.
Okay.
And I actually do Godzilla.
Really?
So it's not that, yeah. But there were two sea monsters in the show, and they both had really different takes on being a sea monster. So I wanted them both in the same show to show the audience, like, you could do so many different things with the same theme.
That's so fun.
She was not the only sea monster in the show.
I love that.
Maybe because of Shape of Water, sea monster theme burlesque is getting rejuvenated a little bit.
Maybe that's what's happening.
Maybe somebody's done a Shape of Water burlesque show.
What is, like, if you look back in all your years of burlesque, is there one theme that stuck out where you're just like, it was so out there, so funny, so outrageous? Is there one that in particular that sticks out?
I mean, they're all pretty great, but I was actually in a show called Blasphemy on Easter.
Oh my goodness.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
So that was, I don't know. I mean, we do so many themes, like so many outrageous stuff happens. If anybody wants to see some really outrageous, really well done theme burlesque, the show to see is the Miss Coney Island pageant.
There you go.
Okay.
It's so good.
Where's it at?
When is it?
That's in September. I don't remember the date, but if you want to see me, it would be August 3rd, which is probably,
It's in a few days.
yeah, it's probably,
And at Coney Island?
it's called Cat House.
It's on
Cat
Friday.
House in Coney Island.
It's
a week from
Friday, August 3rd, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm making the costume right now.
Awesome.
Do you have we'll get to your social media contact at the end, but do you have like a burlesque calendar if people wanted to see you perform?
I don't perform as frequently as I teach anymore.
Gotcha.
But I announce on Instagram if I'm going to be performing.
Cool.
I announce classes all the time.
Awesome.
What is your Instagram? Just
Headmistress Joe.
Headmistress Joe.
Does anyone, we asked about Sex and the City burlesque, but does anyone do, like, I know like burlesque names people
Mm-hmm.
have, have you ever run across a Sex and the City burlesque name? Like anyone like Mrs. Big?
Not that I remember, but that doesn't mean it hasn't
Scary
happened.
Bradshaw. Well, we had a
Scary Bradshaw.
Yeah, Scary Bradshaw. That would be mine.
Horror movie, Sex and the City themed
Yeah, that'd be
burlesque.
cool.
It's great. She's just dead the whole time. Yeah.
We had on Carrie. He was Carrie Dragshaw, which is he's a
That's great.
big Instagram star now,
He's
and
a drag queen.
yeah, and he was great guy as well. Dan Clay.
Dan Clay. Listen to the Dan Clay episode of the Bradshaw Boys
That's right.
in our first season.
So actually, we had one of the things. The circumcision guy. What was his name?
Mike Flapper.
Mike Flapper actually stole our idea because he had the 5 whisk rating system as a food critic
Should today's episode be the 5? Should we do on 1 to 5 whisks?
in honor of Mike's
Mike?
foreskin.
In honor of Mike's-
No.
That's now in a trash.
we do 1 to 5.
we can do 1 to
foreskins?
5 skins.
There you go.
One thing that I did think would have been funny is, when you have a bris for a baby and they're circumcised, if you do it traditionally, a moil comes in and they suck the blood out of the penis. And I wondered if that would happen to 35-year-old Mike
gosh.
Flapper.
Yeah.
If a
It's
moil
probably
would
Samantha.
it probably was. She's Samantha in moil burlesque.
Yeah.
And they're
And that's how she ends her
trying
act.
to outlaw that. It's like a big controversy in the state of New York.
I see him in Union Square.
Yeah.
All right, so 1 to 5 skins or Cosmos is how we're rating this episode. Joe, you don't have to go first because we won't put you on the spot.
We'll go.
But we'll make Cory go first.
Good God, John. Why would you put me on the spot?
1 to 5 Cosmos. Where are we at?
I'm going to go either 1 to 5 Cosmos, Whisks, or Skins. I'm going to go 4. I'm going to go 4. I
Skins.
really like this one. 4 Skins.
Wow.
I thought this one was great. I always...
Skins.
4 Skins. Thank you, Joe, for getting that before anyone else got that. Thank you. It was really originally John's joke. But I feel like that I want to save a 5 rating, and I feel like when we get a 5, I'm going to know it's a 5. But this one was really good.
Very good.
And we talked a little bit about it, but the ending scene, like Miranda and Steve, and then he calls her, and then the line that you brought up earlier is, it was like, sometimes you can't always change a man, but once in a blue moon, you can change a woman. And it's
Great.
like Steve's sweetness. He brought Miranda in. It was sweet. It honestly, like, I really started to feel some stuff then. And it felt so good to feel again.
Wow.
So yeah, that's where I rate.
Leave it
4.
to Steve to bring up some feelings.
Thank you, Steve.
We'll go around this way. I am going to absolutely give it 4 Cosmo Skins as well.
Thank you.
Great episode. And I'm like you, I wanted to give it a 5. It had everything, all the elements that I think make a good Sex and the City episode. It had the ladies dishing at drag show bingo. It had the ladies dishing at brunch. We had walking through the park with pretzels. We had 4 great storylines, although Samantha's was lacking a little bit. It was funny. I laughed. It had good music. We had Big Rockin' the Turtleneck at the end there. 4 Cosmos. Absolutely. Great episode.
I'm giving it 4.25 Cosmos.
Wow.
And I thought that before you said your first answer.
Liar.
And because I was like, I don't want you to influence, but I was afraid you were going to say 2 and I was going to be out here looking like a doof.
No.
But so yeah, I loved it. I think I've already given some a 4. So that's why I needed to bump this up.
So good.
But I loved it. I thought it was great. And I do appreciate a little bit of heart. I felt like there's this need that you want, that so many ones are goofy and like kind of cynical and stuff, that they just fulfilled this need of being like, I actually kind of like what's going on and I'd like to just have a little feel happen. And that did. And I love that final scene. And so 4.25.
Awesome.
Joe? And you can do half and quarter Cosmos, like he just did a 4.25.
Okay. Yeah, and I've never rated one before, so I don't have anything to rate it against. But I thought it was just so charming, and the dialogue was so much fun, and they all looked wonderful, and New York looked fantastic, and it had so many things that I love about New York. And it had drag queens in it, which are just so wonderful, and it was just so good. And honestly, I'm going to give it 4.5.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, after the episode, you did say a comment that I'm going to have to watch more of this.
Yeah,
now.
it made me want to watch more Sex in the
Woohoo!
City.
That's
And
great.
it's,
Mission
I
accomplished.
just really enjoyed it.
I love
Awesome.
that.
Well, remind everyone what your social media handles are. Where can we hear about you? Where can we find out more about you?
Oh, no, I'm actually supposed to promote myself.
Oh, yeah, you are.
Promote yourself, yeah.
Weave it in. So Headmistress Joe on Instagram, and I am Joe Weldon on Twitter. And I have 2 websites, but you can reach them both through schoolofburlesque.com.
School of Burlesque.
And if you don't want to see that, you can just go to historyofleopardprint.com, where I announce my book events.
And it is a really beautiful looking book. It's
Thanks.
shiny. It's awesome looking. Congratulations. It's really exciting.
And you're
Thank
an
you.
absolute legend. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much for
thanks.
joining us.
We were so
thank
honored.
you, y'all.
And, yeah.
This was
Oh,
so
no, I'm
fun.
so honored to be here. It was so much fun.
Awesome.
And also,
Thank
if
you.
someone wants to take a class with you, you do those pretty constantly. If someone wants to take a
Yeah.
burlesque class.
We have the calendar's on schoolofburlesque.com, and there's every week.
All right, go
Awesome.
to Joe's website. And if you end up taking a class with her, let us know.
Yeah.
Shout it out, and we'll shout you out. We'll tell
Yeah.
people to come to your show.
And remember, everybody, physical violence is never the answer.
Nope.
That's true.
Don't hit big in the face if he knocks you out of bed.
And as always, this episode was brought to us by the Diaphragm. Thanks again for blocking all that unprotected sex. Is that or protecting
I think that's what it
sex?
does.
Thank you, Diaphragm.
Thank you,
All right.
diaphragms.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you so
bye-bye.
much for joining us.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
The Bradshaw Boys stars Cory Cavin, Jon Sieber, and Kevin James Doyle. The show is produced by Jeremy L. Balon. For more information on the guys, check out their website at bradshawboys.com, on social media at The Bradshaw Boys. And if you see them in the street, tip your glass. Thanks for listening.